very happy to be here because because I think I can speak quite freely about the things that are going on. And well, first of all, I think we are the kind of people that always think there's something going on. So there's always something going on. So that's the default. And then in this something going on, we have to define somehow whether that's peripheral, whether it's occasional, whether it has to do with a particular concrete situation that sets forward some results and we act on that, or that there is something going on that's beyond all these concrete sort of happenings that are tied to specific cultural, economic, social, technological situations. Now, if we think that, then we are in the sphere of Hegel's Geist, the Weltgeist, of Heidegger's notion of Technik, and so we are basically assuming or saying that there is some kind of autonomous trajectory that's happening or going on at the moment, and that not only do we see or do we feel or do we realize somehow that things are happening because of all kinds of particular or concrete situations. We also assume that there's something happening that has some kind of trajectory that has something that sort of that we can touch upon, but that's somehow also beyond us. Well, this is actually, I think, what's going on, and for a number of reasons. My background is in literature, and that's my that's where I still am, basically. And basically, it's always in the in-between land, and this, of course, is always where the early signs of things that are going on and the happenings are picked up in literature and in the arts, and that's also, I think, the case with this particular iteration. And in a sort of personal way, or how would you say it, in a kind of physiognomical way or something, it feels as if there's no more space to breathe. So it's like everything is sort of cluttered up, and there's no more space. There's this notion of Heidegger, of Techne, the open space in the woods. This was always sort of the space of becoming, of aletheia, of the very notion of a becoming of truth being possible that actually we could somehow as humans relate to or resonate with. And it seems that sort of open space is being filled up with a lot of clutter and a lot of noise. I think that's the first sort of feeling that I have, a lot of friends have, is that a lot of makers, I teach a lot at arts academies. In the past decades, I've seen that there's been some kind of a sort of a lack of even wanting to create something for students. Not because everything's been done or something like that, but it's just like, why? There's no real, why would you actually sort of go ahead and sort of do all these things? So that's the first thing. That's a real, that's basically my drive. Because this space is cluttered up. When it's cluttered up, we're all dead, because then that's the end of any viable notion of becoming. The French philosopher calls it the end of libido. I forget his name now. Is dit one time? No, it's not Baudrillard. He's living. He's
Reich.
No, it's. He's also writing about the Internet of Things. He's.
Rodney?
No.
Stiegler.
Yeah, Stiegler, yeah, Bernard Stiegler, yes. And so Stiegler, he's basically feeling the same. He calls it the end of libido. I came to it as sort of the end of the open space of in the woods of Heidegger, or simply feeling, or just going around your daily activities and actually sort of realizing that there's no more vitality there's no more thought or thinking that could actually drive the very notion that vital actions can sort of come from that. Or you can then start to go back to destructive ones, but that's not where I want to go, because then you end in the sort of the thinking of the Unabomber who's still in jail, and he basically saw the same thing from his position, where he realized that that the technologies that were coming now were so strong in terms of taking over the interfaces to the systems, that every generation would feel that the next interface of the computer, say the iPad, was technology or the computer itself. So the way that children now are growing up with slicing their fingers, sort of like doing this, makes it very difficult for them that they can actually start coding and then code the fact that they can do this, but also can do that. So they're growing up in this sort of, in this axiomatic space, that doing this is actually what computing is about. Now he saw that very early, and his response was, at that time, before the internet, that he wanted to put that out. Now we can blog it, we can make our own sites like I did, and we can sort of put up whatever we want, or create our own communities, and it doesn't take much money at all, or it just takes a bit of energy. But at that time that was not possible because there was no internet, so he had to do this bombing campaign and send off bomb letters, and this sort of killed, I think, 4 or 5 people and maimed about 20, which is not a good strategy. But if you read his texts, basically we can agree, or I can agree, basically 99% sort of with all that's there. It's just that at that point when he was doing all this in the 80s, beginning of the 90s, he still had this idea of nature as a sort of last way out, which I guess for us is gone now. There's no more nature in that sense. There's no more space that we can actually go. I have a lot of friends that are moving to very distant spaces, trying to get away from the cities, and going to all kinds of places, actually with a lot of data about about climate change and food and water, all these things. But they're also realizing that they're just buying a little bit of time, because even if you go to very isolated places, there's also wireless there, and there's also, it's going to be all this connectivity. It's going to be there because people need things, and all this connectivity is going to be embedded in things. So there's no more space that we can there's no more real space that we can actually think that we can escape to or escape in. Which means that we have to deal with the real, and that's what I've been doing for the past 12 years, and that's what I'm doing now, extremely literally, in moving away from this thinking and being busy basically 10-12 hours a day with extremely sound but very mundane projects with the big companies and with governments or institutions, because I think that will basically be the end, also the conclusion of my story from my perspective, that there are some courses of action, but these courses of action have no more room outside the real as it has been defined in a complete mundane and utterly banal way. That will be sort of the conclusion. And the way I get to it, I will relate a little bit. So starting from this, basically literary feeling with me and lots of other friends, we then found the beginning of the 90s, end of the 90s, beginning of 2000, I found this lever, sort of very strange moment, something like the book or fire, sort of this RFID thing, a radio frequency identification. And when I saw that, I realized, well, if there's ever going to be a moment of control, that's the new moment. So this is the new, it's a new ontology. It's not just going from one position to another position in the same story. It's a new story, and whoever is in that story from the beginning has the new power. Basically, that's the new form of control. The printing press was able to put out books in 1451. If the kings and the queens and the church in 1451 had wanted, they could have made everybody literate. Europe had 6 million people, London 60,000, Europe had 3 million people, and London 60,000. So it was extremely easy to make everybody read, but they didn't. And if you ask in 1600, can I read a book, you get burned. So the first public library in Europe and in London is 1918. So in 1918 is the first free lending in the UK. And so we can see how strong these sort of forces are that do not want to distribute learning tools. Very strong, because over 450 years they stopped distributing learning tools to basically everybody. Of course, there's universities, but that's for a particular group of people. It's not for everybody. And free lending is only 1918, and the first public library in the Netherlands is also 1918, just because of one man trying to really get this sort of working. So then we see indeed the strange space in which we are now, which is this internet, which is a complete fluke. So if governments now, and especially basically all the governments at this moment, if they would have known what the internet would have brought, then of course they would have killed it immediately. Because it was this fluke. It was from the 50s, and it was people from the military thinking about distributing intelligence, because if otherwise, if you would have had your intelligence in one silo, people could take it out, and then all your stuff would be gone, so you had to distribute it. Now, if you did that, if you want this to work, you need one open circle. Because if you don't have this one open circle, then you cannot make sure that all the knowledge in real time will be the same in all the silos. So you need this one open line. This was completely against everything humans did ever, to have this sort of TCP/IP protocol that would run through all these computers. And this was only done in the 80s, when TCP/IP started with 5 computers. Then 10 years later, we have the second or third fluke in the story, where the guys at CERN and Tim Berners-Lee open sources his www, his HTTP protocol, which gives us the browser in 1993, which is like only 19 years ago that we had this browser, because the first browser was in December 1993, so it's 19 years that we have it. Now, in this 19 years, this fluke, this 3-step fluke of TCP/IP, www, and then all these people collaborating in their APIs, saying, let's share some information at a particular level, because we can gain value and we can also make money later. That's completely against everything humans have done in the past hundreds from their history, basically, when they started bashing each other's heads in and competing like crazy all the time, but not sharing. That was for the weak people, or that was for the others, that was for the crazies. Now, we know what this has done in the past 2 decades or 3 decades. It has completely shifted not only the world, but basically all businesses, because there's, if you look at the top 100 of companies before the internet and after the internet, there's only 10% that's still there. The rest is sort of new. That's from the past 20 years. Of course, all money has been reinvested, but still, it's hugely different. all decision-making processes and governments that are based on decision-making governments are in trouble. I was 3 weeks ago was invited to Rome by the US State Department to talk about Internet of Things. That was very interesting because it was with dozens of intelligence services and organized crime, and the FBI and the CIA was sharing this session. It was fantastic. And my analysis that I made 15 years ago was now played back to me by all these top strategic consultants that are advising governments. And in 5 of the breakout groups, in which were the main threats of the digital were discussed, 2 were about do-it-yourself biology, but they are very worried. 1 was about some military threat, but 2 were about the total breakdown of society, which was, of course, something that we can easily, from our knowledge, sort of go and tell and foresee, and we know that this is going to happen. But it was interesting to see it played back from that point of view. So they're making the same analysis now, which is that the way that this society is organized and the way that the decision-making structures are organized cannot stand the combinated attack of Internet and Internet of Things sort of on these systems, so they will break. Now they know that they will break, and they're of course escaping and doing 2 things basically. The money is moving away from the middle, which is what we all are experiencing. So they will never ever return again to sort of democratic or inclusive societies. That was something of the past. It was a particular moment of capitalism where capitalism needed a lot of money to be distributed over a lot of people, so that these people could buy a lot of stuff, so that they could actually earn something. But the new business models in this Internet of Things, which I will briefly sort of line out in a moment, are about leasing, and they are about building smart cities and building gated communities, where you basically have 50,000 or 100,000 people, and you take all their money and you lease basically everything to them: mobility, storage system, building these Club Med environments that are being built at the moment. So the fastest rising form of building in the United States at this moment is gated communities. In China it's the same, sealed management for the rich or the poor, it doesn't really matter, it's gated communities. Europe too, we all see it. We feel it also, that the same way we feel that this sort of no more open space in the woods for your mental mind or hygiene that's completely contaminated and you just want to go and sleep or disappear. Is that we also feel that in this world, sort of at this moment, there is no more real belief in the fact that we're going to distribute all this in a particular sort of more democratic kind of way. It's not from the side of money. So money is escaping now, is building the smart cities and the sort of venture capital. So they'll be okay. And that's why at the moment it's an extremely sort of important time, as it always is, but now it really is that because we can actually see where in their logical frame of mind all these old modes of thinking and this old violence that has always been extremely strong on all these structures that are set forth by the internet and about sharing and collaborating. They are escaping into building their new sort of structures, and they will simply put the access at the gate. And so it's still not. It's not decided that sort of that we are winning or something like that. That the bottom up, the hackers, the fab labbers, the do-it-yourself, the open source hardware that's costing nothing anymore now, where people are sort of can actually build your own complete smart energy home environment for 100 euros, and it's all going to work. It's there, it's scaling, it's working, it's growing, but it is not said yet that this will not be another hippie moment, where again, like in the 60s, this nice moment was taken up and sort of dispersed in certain less disruptive ways. Or the anti-globalization movement in the end of the 90s that was effectively killed by the September 11 sort of happenings and all the security talk that sort of came after that. So this too is still one of these moments, and when I talk to students, young people now that have grown up in this internet, they've grown up in this thing, right? So 10 hours a day you're in front of this thing. Now everything works in this thing, and everybody's working together in this thing. Right? The browser and all your programs and sort of it's beautiful. And then when you close it, you look at the world, and the world is a really bad application. The world is a very bad app. It's just they just can't understand how their parents and all these people and whatever, how they actually managed to create such a mess, because it's completely unlike anything that their world in their browser sort of is. And there's this book by John Wyndham, and he wrote, he was an engineer, he wrote these sort of science fiction stories in the 50s. And he wrote also a book, The Midwich Cuckoos. And in the Midwich Cuckoos, there's a small village, and about sort of for some reason, something happens, and then all the women get pregnant. And all the women get pregnant, so like very old women or young women, so the guys are not happy, but they realize something strange is going on, so they decide to not go and slap everybody around, and sort of, but they sort of stay calm. And then the kids get born, and then we all see this through the eyes of one philosopher of the village. The kids get born, and they're beautiful, and they look fantastic, and they're shiny and have great eyes, and he's also noticing that when some girl is learning something, all the girls know it. And when one boy is learning something, that all the boys know it too very quickly. So he's thinking about this kind of mental sort of, all these sort of possibilities that people could actually share thoughts together. And not only that, but also actions. So it's like he's beginning to think it's like one boy and one girl. And throughout the text, we get this sort of ideas that this is going to kill this world. Of course, I mean, there's no way that this old world of standalone people can do anything against a new generation, but also a new ontology, sort of a new way of being, of a whole group of kids that are somehow so connected that they sort of act as one. And he, in the end, because he's really familiar with them, he packs his truck full of explosives and he blows them up. So, because he just sees, well, I'm sorry, but we have to blow you up because you're just alien, right? So this is just an alien presence in our midst. And if we allow this presence to grow, then our civilization will be dead, because we are basically nothing like you. It's like it's a new. If you grow up with this, you grow up. Your brain is different from growing up with a book or growing up without a book or without a computer. So yeah, unfortunately, we cannot blow up the entire generation now. Sort of, so we have to deal with them. And this will. Yeah, to me that was an important moment, because I realized that for John Wyndham, this intelligence could only be alien. So it was so different and so strange that it could only be really alien, and alien to what we are. In a way, I really feel that too, because what this has been doing, and what this has been doing for me and for my friends and for lots of other people, is that it has allowed us to act in a complete alien way to all the structures that are basically alive now because of all these old hierarchic systems. In a very concrete way, I set up the Internet of Things.eu in 2009. From that moment on, I got invited to lots of conferences and important meetings in China and wherever in the world as the director of council because people also thought that I was an official European Union sort of section. And I always say, well, we're just a bunch of people, and we just and it then got so far that 2 European projects actually hired me with, and one of them, so I'm now working officially for 2 European Union projects. And for one, they specifically hired me because they also have their URLs of the Internet of Things, but you find me first on Google. So they hired me, so that now they can also say that I'm also working with them. And this is just fun. It's role playing. So, but it's role playing because I think, if I can say that here, because it's also role playing in a kind of literary way. It's also role playing in a kind of way of always realizing that it's been especially the enormous success of that middle ground, that middle way of thinking, of the implementation side of thinking, that's become too powerful in our world, and that has taken up the bandwidth of what is normal to such an extent that normally we could only be outside. So, of course, I started as an artist and as a writer and and I can easily play that role. And but I find that role in this particular iteration too simple, and also not effective enough, because I'm immediately the other when I go and sit and talk to technicians or to others, and then it's the whole arts and science sort of debate, and it's beautiful, but it's also completely stigmatized and also very much formalized already as you move into a particular role in the sort of schemes that are outlined for you. And this is all fine when this is not about real fights, or when it's not about the real world, or when it's not about disruptive situations. But there is a kind of urgency here. I mean, this is not, it's not as if we have 10 years or 20 years, well, hopefully we have 10 years, but it's not as if we have an enormous amount of time if we actually want to get what we want sort of to happen in real life, not only in the galleries or in a few hackerspaces or or there. So what I've been trying to do is to try to bring sort of my kind of thinking into the heart of that beast of implementation and thinking. And that's really interesting because it's really hard work. So the past few weeks I've been working on preparing a stakeholder workshop with the European project YOTA, and this is with Siemens and SAP and SAP and stakeholders from like these big companies and sort of like that. And this was about basically doing 4 or 5 things that intellectually cost me the most amount of energy at all, because I have to go into the details and I have to go and try to understand what they want to do in such a way that I can then play it back and still insert something in there, just a little thread that will then also be picked up in this whole sort of thing, and it has to be done without realization, both from my part or from their part, of sort of basically what's going on. So I also fool myself, and yeah, it's really that's really a lot of work in the sense that it's not fun. So it's very boring. It's very mundane. This is about washing machines, and this is about protocols and standards, and I think that's where we have to go now, where we have to also invest time and energy, because well, basically, because we face these two trajectories now. Either all this is going to happen, and it is going to happen. So let me just quickly show this. Yeah. So yeah, this is it, and this cannot be stopped. So the first barcode was around in 1973, and if you would have said in 1973 there's going to be a barcode on everything, people would have been really worried. They would say, no, I don't really believe that, because companies are not going to share that data. But they did, and now we have the barcode on basically anything. Then at the end of the trouble with the barcode is that it's only like, if you have a bottle with a barcode, then you have 10,000 of them. So it's not a unique identifier of this bottle. So there's also, this barcode is also on 10,000 other bottles or 1,000 bottles. Plus you have line of sight, so if you want to read it with a barcode reader, you have to do this, and the readers now are better, so also in supermarkets they read everything. But that's two drawbacks. So then in the end of the 90s, people got the RFID tag under the penny cost, and RFID is radio frequency identification, and that came from the World War II, where the Brits were beaming energy from big towers, and the Spitfires had sensors in the cones of their noses, and so that they would be identified, and then on the ground, even before they were seen, they could the British defense could shut down the German planes that were following the Spitfires, and the Spitfires were unharmed. It took the Germans a while to realize how they did it, but that's how it started. Now we all have RFID in our pockets. Either in your new bank card, there's an RFID chip. If you go to your office or anywhere with a card, there's a RFID in it. So there's a reader basically in the wall, and you put your card to it. It has a small antenna. The reader gives it enough energy to power the antenna to give the code to the reader. Then there's a local database, which is very simple, XML file, and it says this person can enter or that person can not enter, or this person. Now, in 1999, Neil Gershenfeld from MIT got it under the penny cost. At that moment in time, nobody was really so worried about it, because database storage was very expensive. So if you look at the debates in the 90s, it was about database storage. It was very expensive. Now you buy terabyte or petabyte sticks for 60 euros. But so then people could not believe that it would actually be possible that instead of the barcode, I'm going to put an RFID on every object. Well, now it's feasible, and it's feasible for two reasons. One is because it's getting very cheap, and there's just no end to the cloud, as people say it. They just put on servers, and they just plug service with it. So we can actually, if we were to map, say, all the movements that we make with our hands, and this movement sensors, it's like so much data already, but it's nothing. So it's possible. We can map the entire city. We can map movements of a sense of the entire city, which is all that data that has to be some physical hit in some database somewhere, for a very temporary reason. It can all be there.
What is the cost of an RFID sensor?
That depends. It depends on the frequencies, on the readers. It's from 1 cent, even below 1 cent, up to 80 cent or 60 cent for particular readers that you will hear, tags that you will hear about, near field communication, NFC. There's also NFC in my phone. There's lots of near field communication in the phone, and this will be about going to the supermarket, putting your phone to, say, a package of coffee, and you get information about who made the coffee. The person who made the coffee is also on Facebook. He says, do you want to be friends with me on Facebook as you get your coffee in the supermarket? I said, no, I don't want to be friends with you on Facebook, or yes, I do want to be friends with you on Facebook. So this is all going to happen. For that you have NFC, which is two-way radio frequency communication. And that means that the last digits on that tag point to a web page, and your phone is always on. So you make the web page as you go along. And then you have QR codes. If you go on a holiday, you print your ticket. If you take your ticket with you, you go to Zaventem now, and you get your ticket. There's active sensors. So Heineken, for example, has all their pallets of beer are on custom sensors. So they call it green lanes, and they go through the world. They never stop. Just when they reach their destination, they stop briefly because they send all the custom information before they reach the customs. All the groceries that we buy now, all the pricing of that basically is being done, at least for the big supermarkets, but let's say for this will grow and grow and grow. This is done based on sensor readings. So the bananas go into a container. The container has sensors in it, temperature sensors and moisture sensors and everything. An ideal scenario is being mapped, saying that if these values are okay, then this will be the price. The moment the temperature drops, the price goes up or goes down. And so the pricing is no longer done by people opening the containers and actually looking at the bananas and then saying something. That was already done beforehand. And then you have IP46, which is that in the 80s, when people thought of the internet architecture, they thought that 4 billion computers was going to be the maximum. So they needed 4 billion internet unique IP addresses. But they did not think about mobile phones. So at this moment in time, there's mobile phones, there's iPads, there's all kinds of devices that need unique address. And so IP46 is coming. This is a new hardware, so people are installing it. It's expensive. China and Asia is leading that. But in the end, everybody will have to follow. And your washing machine and everything that you have that has some software in it, like your toothbrush, your coffee machine, your washing machine, will have a unique IP internet address. And so anything that's going on with any bit of software in all our devices, which are basically a lot of devices, will have a unique IP address. Now, if you look at that, so when I started out from this in the 90s, looking at this, I was very worried, of course, and when I wrote this text in 2006, I had two endings. One ending was we're fucked. So I was with a friend, with Sean Dodson, and he was writing with me, and he said, "Rob, let's do it." That you cannot do that. So I said, "Well, you're right, but I think basically we're fucked." And then he said, "Okay, let's do it differently." So I'm going to say I'm going to have a different ending, and the ending is, okay, I've got my window wide open because I was listening to a song by Jacob Dylan. And then he says, I got my window open wide. I said, okay, I got my window open wide. Let's see what happens. Now then all these sort of policy things happens because then I was asked to moderate Forum Europe, a business conference, basically by Gerald Santucci, who's high up in the European Commission. And I'm going to moderate that again next week, and that's with all the hotshots and CEOs, all the people that are sort of doing that. I couldn't believe that they asked me to do that because the text was very critical. But that's what happens in the old paradigm of power. When you have a critical text, you're being co-opted. It's the old Qatari idea. The new thing now is that this phase of co-optation of critical people throughout history worked because these critical people could not have their own environments. Now it no longer works because we can set up our own environments and find the people where we know what the energy is. And the energy is not there. So I'm in the expert group for the European Commission, which is nice, and it gives me some official backing that I can use if people want that. But I'm not interested in people who need that backing. And of course we never were. But then we had a little bit of a problem, but now we don't, because through the net and with all our easy way of setting up base camps and whatever and hack labs, we can do it ourselves. So we are no longer in need of this official recognition and reputation-based reputation systems. But what is happening now, and this is a very critical moment with people like me, is that these reputation-based systems that are offline and online are converging now. So, and this is something that these spheres of power are not really used to. So when I talk with people in industry, I send them my most radical text and say, well, basically, to me, this is anarchism, this is autonomy and solidarity. If we want to build it, we are going to build this in a complete flat way, and the protocols that are playing here are going to level out everything that you would like to sort of not have in there. So I'm giving them my last line of what I think that this can be in a positive way. And they still want to do business or to have me as an expert or do all these things, because they also get it. They are not stupid. So there's a lot of companies, like big companies, and I would also say Google and Eric Schmidt, that sort of is putting out ideas at the moment in terms of governing and decision-making systems, saying, look, there's so much real-time data out there now that instead of having this kind of so-called democracy and then having people decide laws for so many people, let's just if you want something, let's put it in place somewhere, try it out for 3 months, and this kind of iterative design kind of thinking, and let's refine it and see what it works. So this is it. So the first reaction, it's inconceivable that this is not going to happen. So because it's too much. We have these barcodes, we have these QR codes, we have these IP46, we have RFID, we have active sensors, we have the young generation that's grown up with this computer that is now fully on smartphones, and that is also just looking at all this Internet of Things as a little bit more connectivity and location-based services. So for this younger generation, none of this will be so strange. None of this will be radical. None of it will just be quite normal. Just be a little bit more, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. And that's also why, I realized, and with lots of other people, that we could also not hack it, because we cannot hack all these things. You can hack a few cameras, you can hack RFID, you cannot hack all your RFID every morning. So then we decided, if we cannot hack it, we have to be the new iteration, we have to be the new default. And that's what I think that's what we're trying to do by trying to influence in a very open way all in these conferences and in these meetings, and by becoming and setting up this Internet of Things think tank. We're launching a company as of January, the Internet of People. We know it's not. We know it's about a lot's going to be about robots and machines, but the Internet of People is now sort of it's really ugly marketing, because this is where we will get a lot of people who will think it's about people, and it's not going to be about people at this iteration. But we're going to get them. So it's really bad. Sort of we get really grey. It's really ugly. It's not really fun anymore. I lie awake a lot because thinking about these things. Because as we are going to do all these things, there's also a lot of moments where a lot of my friends don't know what I'm doing. Well, and so it's difficult. Well, so this is coupled with the interaction design of Mark Reiser, who in 1999 was sitting at Xerox PARC with his computer, with a keyboard and a mouse, and he was saying, well, the mouse is from 1964, and I'm still using it. And the computer in 1964 was the Cray 2, which was the big computer, and he was leaning against the Cray 2. And so now I have, in 1991 he didn't have the laptop, but he had his desk, sort of his machine. And he said, this is crazy. So what happened was, in the past 40 years, we made the world ready for computers. And this was a mental process. In the 60s, people said, nobody's going to put a computer in their home. It's just a work thing, and now it's people are with it on the couch, sort of, or on the toilet or in the bath. This takes time, and it took time. Computers got smaller, but I'm still accessing it with a keyboard and a mouse, and that's a bit crazy, because I cannot, this thing is 10,000 times faster than the computer that Douglas Engelbart designed the mouse for. So let's take some connectivity out of this computer and put it in my chair, so that the chair recognizes me. And let's put some connectivity out of the computer and put it in my home, so I get a smart home that sort of feels my mood. And this is what we get now from lots of companies, proactive homes that will sort of feel your mood as you walk into the door, and all those things start happening in scenarios that start playing, and we can write the scenarios, of course. And then you take some connectivity out of the computer and you put it into the streets, and we get a smart city. So these two things are lined together, and in between is us. Now the uptake of smartphones is completely ridiculous in terms of uptake of devices. And if you look at the first, how much it took to get to the first million televisions, how much it took to get to the first million radios, how much it took to get to the first million smartphones, 3 minutes. Sort of, we are a communicative race. We want to stay in touch with our tribe and our friends all the time. We're in cities. We don't want to be in cities. We're alienated, and we need to stay in touch with sort of everybody. And the fact that we get a little bit obsessive compulsive and disordered by that, this has become part of our culture now. Because of course, when you start missing that signal, things start to happen. When I was first sort of dating my girlfriend, and she didn't have a phone, and then I phoned there was a club next to her door. So I phoned that club and I asked them sometimes to put a note under her door. We could go without communication for weeks. I would be very fine. Now, if I text her, if she doesn't text back within 3 seconds or within a minute, I get worried. I start calling. It's crazy. So the whole thing is just, it's a trap. Sort of, it is trapped my mind into, but we cannot deny that. So we have to really work with what's there. We are a culture now that is entrapped and enslaved, and it's in need of this constant hiss, this constant. Well, this was what I first sort of heard when I heard this RFID, sort of this hiss of. It's like something trying to trap you, or sort of, or to get you. But there's no way out of it anymore. So the only thing that we can, I think, at the moment do is if we see this, what we can do. Sometimes I think I'm just going to Yogyakarta and with my friends and sit on the beach, and I actually, the persons who thought of this before me. He was very early. There's a text from him from 1996. Hedner, Ben Russell. That's a fantastic text, and he was even more early of sort of seeing this, and he is indeed now in Indonesia making sandals with his girlfriend, and he's not coming back. He's just, sometimes we sort of call him and say, Ben, come on, we got this. We can come on, you can. He's not doing it. Well, in 10 years I'm going to do the same, because it's just a completely crazy thing. I mean, it really is more like a science fiction novel. If you would assume that there is some alien intelligence out there, then this is how you would hack this planet. And maybe this is what's happening, because the only real sort of, to me, logical explanation is really that there is some shit out there, or that there is some intelligence, and maybe deeply hidden within ourselves. It's also possible that we're getting there, because of course the amount of violence, we should not underestimate the amount of violence that has been put on our kind of intelligence, on this manic intelligence throughout history, where. If you look at mass psychology figures like Stinchcombe, that gives you some analysis. And I mean, he says, okay, power works like this. You have one person you have 0.6 generic influences and 0.4 idiosyncrasies. So the 0.4 is just what makes me me. 0.6 is I'm male, I got this education, I did this and that. And if you scale that to 1 million, the 0.6 remains the same, but the 0.4 becomes 0.444, 0.4. And this is how power works. This is what we see happening now in Syria. Because if you are able to rule like that, and this is how power has always worked, then you can isolate all the idiosyncrasies that are actually disruptive of this 0.4, 0.6 quite easily, and you turn them into terrorists, rebels, or revolutionaries, or they turn themselves into rebels, revolutionaries, and terrorists, or crazies and loonies, and you easily sort of pick them out and you isolate them and you turn the group sort of against them. And this is how it always been done. And this is how it's been going on before the internet, but basically it's before the browser. So every year, sort of, throughout history, just the last 19 years have shown us some indication that people can actually collaborate or share and get value from that. But that's only that 19 years, because before that, it was this paradigm that ruled and that took out and killed and maimed and crippled. Yeah. So many people. That's quite insane. Now, what I think is what's happening is that what's happening now is that this 0.6, 0.4 is changed. Is changing in the direction of 0.5, 0.5. Because for the first time in history, everybody that wants to collaborate in this world can collaborate and is collaborating like crazy. And that's of course why all the many people are going completely insane and are in like 10,000s of projects and movements and things, because we know that this is our chance. If we fuck this up, it's not going to be another chance like this. Now this means that the very nature of power is changing, and this is what we're feeling, and this is what power is feeling. So if the very nature of what determines power, what is power, is changing, and this is why I'm also invited, of course, to these meetings, because the people that are in power, they also realize this, because they're not crazy, and it's not strange that they themselves now come up with this notion of sort of total breakdown. And the very strange thing, I would say, at this moment in time, and is that if we line up sort of all the progressive forces now, from WikiLeaks to Anonymous to all people that have some coding power in the network, to some good old-fashioned sort of anarchist, old-thinking, and the whole anti-globalization movement, sort of like the local food movement, everything is quite impressive, and it can sort of it can definitely have something. But this movement has to do something that's alien to it as a movement, which is it has not to act. It cannot act now. It would just give enormous. It would just give the last forces of that want to have some enemy, and buy again some new time to go into that paradigm. So these forces now should not occupy streets. They should occupy the neighborhoods. They should stay on neighborhood level and say hi to their friends and hi to the family, and sort of like should wait it out a little bit. And at the same time, it's now up to us to help these all dying systems, not to give them some more breath, or not to give them some more reason for acting. But it's basically up to us to help them to develop themselves into more flat and networked sort of structures. And they also get that because they know that they have to change. It's very difficult for them because this is really about people. It's really about us. It's about you and your pension, and it's about you and how you go through your daily life, and it's about you and your work, and it's about you how you spend your energies, and how are you spending them well. And so I was asked 4 weeks ago, for an interview with the Dutch Ministry of Water Management about Internet of Things, because that's why I grabbed Internet of Things, because I knew that everybody would go and get to go there. And they said, well, basically every water drop in Holland is in the grid. So it's not just one water drop or one river or whatever. So that it's not in the sensor-based network of water management in Holland. And they were basically asking, so what was their role now? And I said they could go home. They can. Also, I was getting very angry also a little bit, because actually quite angry, because for the past 300 of years, this type of intelligence that's occupied this middle ground, and that was able to make their notion of techne into the implementation mode of the real and the normal, sort of, let's say the Aufklärung sort of things. Hundreds of years they managed to do that. This type of intelligence has sent home hundreds of thousands of people that were happily in their little homes with all the canals that were sort of there, measuring all these nice things. And they told these people that they should go home, and they fired them, and they put a sensor in place. And now this sensor-based infrastructure, which is quite autonomous, that really doesn't need somebody at the end of the line to say when it's got to act, because they will also be quite slow actually with it. This is now knocking on their doors. And the logical thing for them to do is to actually also realize them, and they can actually realize it because they are. That's also how their mind works. Is that they can go into the requirements now. They become requirements. So for the system, as they have really helped to build that system, but they cannot but they want their cake and eat it, right? They want to build that system, and in the end they also want to stay put with 100 people in the ministry with their fine salaries and their fine pensions and all the nice stuff, and then they still want to have some say in it. This is impossible, and so this is basically the major thing. So logically, what will happen now is that it will break. Because my scenario 15 years ago was people will stop paying taxes. I mean, this is about the Internet of Things. This is about sharing mission critical services. This is about sharing energy. This is about a system that will bring so much transparency to all decision-making systems, because people can put their own pollution sensors and their own smart energy meters, and the companies already are in trouble. All the energy companies are going down with their prices because they realize that people can actually measure all this stuff themselves pretty easily. They've been ripping off the people for such a long time, but also governments with their very notions of governing have been ripping off people. We've been extremely badly governed, and the net is showing that already in some sense. But this Internet of Things will make this only more feasible. It will show this even more. Now, if you have a situation in which the people in Europe, and Europe was built by these old people coming out of 2 world wars, that had to undress their nation states, so we have no more money, we have no more law. 80% or even 90% of all law comes out of Brussels. Anyway, there's no more national states. Law is just all these nice national parliaments are theatre, basically. They have no real say. It doesn't make sense. It's just something that goes through the motion of 8 o'clock news, which we like, but it doesn't say anything. And they also have no more infrastructure because they sold everything. Because in the 50s, when Europe was made, the deal was, okay, we need to have all the trains running. We cannot pay for that. Private companies will pay for that. We will sell the infrastructure. The private company said, fine, but then we need a legal system that also goes into Europe, because we cannot run the risk of having somebody coming into power in some country in 4 years' time and thinking differently about these issues. So we need a stable climate for all these investments. And these people they were used that systematic change would only come from them. So they could not foresee the browser, right? They could not foresee the internet. So in the 50s, they went on this path that they knew would take 50, 60 years minimum. And they could not foresee that at one particular moment the individual would become a systemic force. That people across the world, simple people, could become systemic forces because of something they, of course, they could not foresee. Now, if we have this, and if we then have the fact that I can now organize my friends on energy, and I can organize them on basically everything that I need. Again, this is all these gated communities, and sort of that's happening now. This will end with the logical question of people saying, I'm paying 50% or 40% of my money to a system that's not able actually to do anything with that because they cannot effectuate anything more on money, on law, and on instruments. Then we can.
In the case of barbaras, it's not a question of help, it's a question of defending the bush against the others.
But that is helping each other.
Okay, if you extend the, that's no longer cooperation.
Isn't that cooperation? Defending
okay,
if a single bird cannot cooperate, if a single bird cannot defend,
okay,
they all have